Good evening, Trinidad and Tobago. Welcome to Plain Talk. Before I introduce my guests, there's something I need to say. Trinidad and Tobago is a narco state flirting with failed nation status. 58 years independent, the third wealthiest nation in the Western world is circling the drain. For 43 of those years, the country was ruled by the self-styled Black Party, the Party of the People. Yet all we really have to show for any of it are failed ideas, overinflated, overcost, unnecessary white elephants, a public health system that does not work, an education sector that fails 3/4 of the nation's children and leaves almost 10,000 functionally illiterate and unemployable every year. We cannot feed ourselves. Our water management is divided into 6 months of flood and 6 months of drought. Our borders are wide open, our air guard is grounded, our coast guard is tied up, despite knowing that we are a narco state, a pipeline from production to consumption for tons of illegal drugs. 42,000 illegal firearms face off against 6,000 undertrained, under-equipped police officers and an army still unsure of its purpose. Our financial sector is a laundromat for corruption and narco dollars. Our law enforcement and justice systems fail except for the occasional minnow and wabin. Our jails are a human rights atrocity. We deny human rights and block civil liberties. Our parliament is a bed of corruption. Our governments have failed us, leaving in their wakes a rogues gallery of O'Hallorans, Pravats, Wallaces, Calderharts, Karamats, Galbaransings, and many, many others who have made off with this nation's treasure. We are broke, broken, and in debt. We have no idea, no clue, and no plan. And there are no systems to challenge any of it, save and except for every now and then. Sometime within 5-year blocks of time, elections might be called. And for a fleeting moment, the people have power to choose. But the choice is usually limited between red devils and yellow demons. Enter into these shows and these interviews, these guests and these questions, these debates as to where and how a better way might be, learning from the past to find the best way forward for a rescue upon which to build a future. Tonight, we have the pleasure of a discussion of someone familiar with the belly of that beast, an accomplished attorney at law, an activist, former member of parliament and minister of government under the Patrick Manning PNM, Mr. Peter Taylor. Mr. Taylor, good evening.
Pleasant good evening, Philip. How are you?
I want to say I am hopeful.
Well, hope springs eternal in the human breast.
It is an absolute pleasure to have you here, sir. I had my moment to say something. I don't know if there's anything you would like to say before we start this innings.
Well, I think the country is faced with a unique opportunity. You know, it is often said that one should not waste a good crisis. Here we are facing a pandemic, 2020, but 2020 is also the year when the country constitutionally has to be plunged into the valley of decision. And, you know, in your introduction, you mentioned a lot of truths as to how the country has evolved with different parties, with different regimes. But I think at the core of it, we must continue to strive to improve the quality of human life, the quality of social justice. And maybe 2020, in spite of all of the restrictions with the pandemic, it may have given us an opportunity to sit back and reflect and to resolve to do better whenever that election is called.
Mr. Taylor, following on your hope springs eternal, that little off the cuff there was very inspiring. And I tell every guest that I speak to prior to coming on the show that even though it is raw politics and pure politics, it is not gutter politics. I don't bring people on the show to kick them in the face. I don't bring people on the show to engage in bacchanal. I try to bring people on the show so that they could use their experience to inform, educate, and empower the rest of us. You have unique knowledge that we don't have, that I don't have, and that all of the audience up till tonight have not had access to. So, without further ado, I want to ask you my first question. Somewhere around 2007, and this is a persistent rumor that I need clarification from somebody in the PNM because it answers a lot of questions. Sometime around 2007, it is rumored, 2006, 2007, it is rumored Patrick Manning was summoned to a house in West Trinidad and Tobago and for all intents and purposes fired as political leader of the PNM. Have you ever heard that rumor, and is there any truth to that rumor?
Well, I can say I heard it anecdotally on one or two occasions. But remember, in terms of any kind of chronology, my advent with the PNM would have started only when the election was called. I was not in active politics prior to that 2007 election. You will remember that the election was called in November 2007. So, in terms of inside knowledge, I would never have had any kind of, let's say, awareness because I would not have been lazy or dealing with the PNM rank and file prior to my getting in. But I did hear that that took place. As I said, I have no other knowledge apart from perhaps what you would have heard. I heard it as to whether it was factually correct. I cannot say because I have no direct knowledge as to whether it took place, who was there, what was said, whether he was given an ultimatum. That I unfortunately do not know.
Okay, it's gonna seem like I'm jumping, but at some point I know you will take the bull by the horns and give us whatever you care to give us.
Yeah.
Between 2007 and 2010 election, you became a member of the PNM and a candidate for the PNM, a successful candidate in Maruva Tableland. You became the member of parliament. You were made a minister. Between 2007 election, something changed in the 2010 elections. Before I ask you that, I want to ask you two more questions. Who was the deputy political leader or leader going into the 2010 snap election? Do you recall?
Deputy political leader in 2010. That is a difficult one. I don't recall who would have been the deputy political leader at that time.
It's not. It's just the layup for the real question.
Right.
Because
Go ahead.
I'm trying to understand how a Keith Rowley that was in such bad graces with Patrick Manning that he almost did not get the nod to fight Diego Martin West. How did Keith Rowley, who was not a deputy political leader, what is the system and procedure within the PNM that allowed Keith Rowley to be transported and dropped into the position of political leader over the heads of so many that were in higher positions and better graces in the party?
Well, you have to remember in 2010, after that election was lost, there was a lot of discord, a lot of discontent within the ranks of the PNM. And I don't know whether you recall that in 2008, Keith Rowley was fired from the cabinet. In fact, it was as early as April 2008, a few months after the 2007 election. He was fired from the cabinet. He became a backbencher. And that is when he began to take a diametrically opposed position to the then political leader and Prime Minister Patrick Manning. So the battle lines were drawn after he was dismissed from the cabinet. So that in and of itself now began, I think, his ascension to the political leadership, because it meant that any time that election of 2010 was lost, it meant that Patrick Manning no longer had a base. He no longer had a base within the PNM. He no longer had a national base, because here it was, the PNM was now finding itself in opposition. So having lost, he now became the natural successor based on that.
But Mr. Taylor, Mr. Manning got more votes in the 2010 election than Dr. Rowley got. Dr. Rowley almost did not get in order to fight to contest the seat. Rocky Garcia came within 220-seater maxi taxis from beating Rowley in Diego Martin West. I don't understand how Rowley has a base, because he wasn't the best performing member at the election of the party. He wasn't a deputy political leader. I don't understand the shoe-in when there were other people better positioned for that role, closer to the then leadership of the party. The question I'm trying to ask is, the visible physical leadership of the party that looks like the elected structure of the PNM, does that make the decisions of the party, or do people outside of the People's National Movement dictate who operates and runs the People's National Movement?
Well, that's an interesting question, but to get back to the crux of it, Dr. Rowley would have been, quote unquote, one of the most senior members of the PNM come 2010. And while there might have been other persons who you felt were more long-standing, he has been one of the longer-serving members. I think that would have catapulted him into the leadership position. Remember in 1994, 1995, Philip, he challenged Dr. Rowley for the leadership.
Wendell Motley did as Wendell Motley did as
right, and he lost. So I feel that at that time in 2010, that persons and the country saw him as the natural successor to the Honorable Patrick Manning.
I'll move on from the question, but I need to record this specifically for the record. You say catapult. I need to ask, who or what was manning that catapult? That I'm just trying to understand the system or the procedure, because he may have had some popularity around the 2007 time when you came into politics. I remember I voted for Keith Rowley then. By 2010, it was waning. And I've had to put many a PNM sycophant in their place, because I told them in 2006 and 2007, when plenty of them were spitting on Keith Rowley, I voted for him. There's a different turn of events took place in Trinidad and Tobago between 2007 and 2010. But I was just trying to understand, because you would understand that the PNM has been labeled as a sort of a cult. And it may be undeserving, because I sit here thinking that I could never work with a Keith Rowley PNM, but if Penelope Beckles was a leader of the PNM, I would definitely be interested in working with Penelope Beckles. And it comes down to who is the leader and what you believe they're capable of and what they would stand for. But it looks like there are two parts to the party. It looks like there is a rank and file membership who believe in the ideology of the PNM, or are gathered and corralled as the people that make up the People's National Movement. And then there are the owners and the operators of the PNM who ride their back and take advantage of them. Is that true?
Well, you have to understand the structure. Let's talk structure a bit. The way the PNM is structured is that you have the party groups. The party groups, then out of the party groups, you have the constituency executives. From the constituency executive, you have three persons who are generally nominated to the general council. From the general council, the political leader of the day would choose persons to sit on the central executive. That is the internal structure, if you will. You have, however, financiers. The PNM is an African-based party. However, the financiers who finance the PNM do not come from the broad masses of the PNM, grassroots, middle class. That is not where the financing come from. So if it is you're asking how it is Dr. Rowley, was catapulted there, it meant that the financiers of the party would have determined that this is the horse we are backing, and they will put their money there. So, you have that disconnect. And in 2010, you had a very clear battle line drawn between Dr. Rowley and Patrick Manning. So that when Mr. Manning lost the 2010 election, it seemed almost inevitable that the reins would now turn to Dr. Rowley.
You made a very strong statement there,
Which one is that?
That for all intents and purposes, the financiers of the PNM dictate the PNM.
The financiers would dictate the war chest. The financiers, you have heard who pays the pipers call the tune. When you look at some of the policies that this PNM has undertaken, in my view, you get a sense that it is not necessarily interests of the working class. I represented CL Financial, one set of shareholders in CL. Let us look at isolate CL Financial for a minute to understand the point I'm trying to make. If you look at the history of the origin of CL Financial, it was started by Cyril Dupré in 1936 or thereabouts as an indigenous insurance company at a time when Afro and Indo-Trinidadians were denied access to the colonial banking system. Cyril Dupré was able to create the first indigenous insurance company in Trinidad and Tobago, and it grew in the 50-year period to an enormous conglomerate. When Lawrence Dupré took over the reins up to 2006, just before the financial crisis, CL Financial had expanded into banking, into real estate, into manufacturing, into energy. It had over 14 billion US worth of assets. Dr. Williams at the time embraced the vision of CL Dupré. When financiers turned their backs on public servants, it was Mr. Dupré and the insurance portfolios, various portfolios, that were able to now create an option and opportunities for intergenerational wealth by the mainly Indo and African Trinidadians. So that was during the Eric Williams period. When we came to the period of Mr. Manning, it was in 2009 that you had the financial crisis. It was 2009 that you had the bailout by the PNM government to assist the liquidity crisis that was facing CL Financial. CL Financial at the time had not so much an asset problem, it was more a liquidity problem. Some $22 billion were afforded to CL Financial over a period of time. Now fast forward to the tenureship of Dr. Rowley. One would have thought that if there was any understanding of the historic beginnings, the humble beginnings of CL Financial as an indigenous institution, you would have thought that this black government, so-called black government, would have done everything in its power to preserve CL Financial. What you have is quite the opposite. You have CLICO assets, the CLICO portfolio, which at its height had 250,000 policyholders being sold to Sagicor or Barbados. You have the assets of CLICO, a private institution, being taken out and placed in a national investment fund when those assets are really privately owned. So I'm saying that when you look, go ahead.
If you'd give leave
I
for me
think
to ask you a question, you take me to a place where I have to ask you this question. Okay, was Lawrence Dupre, as the head of CL Financial and CLICO, punished by Patrick Manning for assisting Bastio Pandey, for getting in bed with the UNC, for assigning Carlos John as an deputy political leader and a possible heir to the leadership of the UNC? When Patrick Manning came back into office, wasn't national gas funds pulled from CLICO at a time when CLICO could barely afford to have that kind of run on their system? Wasn't that what precipitated the collapse of CLICO and CL Financial? Wasn't it political, and wasn't it vengeance?
I don't see it that way. And the reason why I say that is that there was a Coleman Commission of Inquiry that investigated the workings of CL Financial. There was a lot of mismanagement that took place of CL Financial assets. And that is what precipitated, in my respectful view, the crisis that ensued. And it was not, remember, it was not CL Financial alone. It was very many insurance and finance companies all over the world, JP Morgan among them. So I am not, I am not.
The bubble that burst in the United States of America in 2008 that precipitated the fall of CLICO. CL Financial and CLICO was trying to do massive investments in the United States of America, and their money, they lost a lot of money when that happened. And that, well, I mean, I wasn't going down that road, but that is what weakened them. Wasn't the kill shot the recall of National Gas Company funds? Wasn't that the kill shot?
I don't subscribe to that view because remember, CL Financial, even at that time, had a very broad based, very broad asset base. And when they came to the government in 2009, they said that, listen, the government recognized, even at that time, that because of the very large impact that CL Financial had on the national economy, in fact, at that time, CL Financial would have comprised roughly 17% of the GDP. The government of the day recognized that CL Financial is really too big to fail. It wasn't, in my view, in my recollection, now I'm subject to correction, but I do not recall any discussion around the cabinet table having to do particularly with NGC. It had to do more with the recognition that here was this conglomerate, very influential in terms of maintaining the economic health of the country, and that you heard the term systemic risk. We could not simply allow CL Financial to fail. It was not really an attempt to assist creditors, more policyholders, and ensure that the company was able to meet its liquidity requirements. So maybe I am the wrong person to ask that question, but I have no recollection of NGC
Well, we can
being dynamic there.
right there. We can take a pen right there and bring it back to the actual PNM, because I need to ask you, is the People's National Movement a democratic organization from the bottom to the top?
Well, let's talk real politics. I told you what the party structure is like. You have your party groups, you have your constituency executives, you have your general council, you have your central X.
What's the role of the
Now,
party groups?
well, the party groups are essentially the connection to the ground. The party groups are at the very base of the chain of command, if you wish. The party groups are the persons who go from street to street, who understand where everybody lives in every part of the constituency. The party groups are the ones who organizes the party from the ground up. So the party groups are the salt of the earth, if you wish, in terms of gathering the forces. The party groups are um, structured in a way that they are the base and the heart of the party, so that everybody know
Is
where
it
everybody else lives.
vested in the party groups?
Sorry?
Is the democracy of the PNM vested in the party groups?
That's a good question. To a large extent, yes. To a large extent, yes. And I say that because in terms of my own candidacy, I was not a member of the PNM at the time. I was not from Aruba. But my entry into the political dynamic had to go through the party group. I had to join a party group and become a member of a party group. And from that party group is where the ascendancy to the constituency executive began. The party group was the one with whom I engaged in terms of getting to know persons in the constituency. So in a sense, the party group is representative, at least theoretically, of that democratic ideal. Because if the party group didn't nominate you, then you would have a difficulty in getting your candidacy and your nomination.
I want you to say, I want you to use, I need to hold you to this point, and I need you to explain. If the party groups do not anoint you, you would have difficulty. Explain that a little more in depth, please.
No, that is not cast in stone. I'm just saying that in terms of my own experience, that of course you have to be a member of a party group, you have to be nominated. But of course, if the political leader of the day feels that Mr. X or Miss Y is a suitable candidate, then the political
One-
leader would express his or her opinion, and then that is what is going to hold sway.
100% of the party groups in 2015 wanted Amory Brown in Diego Martin Central. 80% of the votes cast in the party groups wanted Nylon Hippolyte in Laventille West. These are two that I know of. Laventille West ended up foisted Fitzgerald Hines, and Diego Martin Central got Justin Phelps, who couldn't live up to his role, and he was replaced by Darrell Smith. In fact, Kid Rowley looked like he would have grabbed anybody passing on the side of the road, anybody but Amy Brown, who was seen as a man. But 100% of Diego Martin Central Party groups wanted Amory Brown.
Yes,
what happened to what happened to their democracy?
Right.
What happened to their voice in the party?
Absolutely. This is why I added that caveat that at some point in time, the political leader of the day would hold sway, and if there's a preference for a particular individual, then in spite of the wishes of the rank and file of the party groups, you have somebody who is imposed on that particular constituency, and the party groups say, well, listen, you have to work with so and so, in the interest of the greater good. So there's no there's no perfection, there's no ideal. I quite accept what you have said, and sometimes that works to the detriment of the party in question. In my own case, in the 2010 election, the party groups wanted me to be returned as the candidate in 2010, but Mr. Manning, in his own wisdom, decided that I might have been not the best person. And he picked up the telephone on a morning and told me, in spite of the wishes of the constituency executive, who wanted me, who knew that I was the person for the seat, he picked up the phone one morning and said, "Listen, I want you to withdraw your candidacy because we have somebody else." In spite of the wishes, and history would show that that led not only to the defeat of the PNM in that particular Moruga Tableland seat, that led to the defeat of the PNM in the 2010 general election. So that is my own personal experience with having that kind of imposition being placed on the constituency executive. It doesn't
I
always
hear
work.
about I hear about the marvelous structure of the People's National Movement, but yet I know Dane Wilson was voted into office as the youth officer, and then he was cast aside. Fitzgerald Hines, who was in his 60s at the time, was made the youth officer of the PNM. I mean, there are so many questions. How did Faris Al-Rawi become the PRO when he was removed? How was Stuart Young appointed as the PRO? Keith Rowley walked on a stage and lifted Clyde Phelps' son Justin Hand in the air and said, "There's a PNM member for life." He was supposed to run for Digger Martin Central. They was putting him in the Senate. He ended up in the back page in the Mirror, and then he disappeared from the PNM. But I'm asking, and it is literally not to put any of these people on blast, but I have to use all of these examples as examples. These are knowledgeable facts that the PNM, for all the talk that they want to tell you about the marvelous democratic structure of the People's National Movement, that it is a myth, that it is designed to fool the rank and file on the ground, to give them busy work and send them out busying themselves. Remember, Kamla did that to Prakash Ramada, sent him for 4 years on a constitutional reform junket throughout the country, knowing that they had no intention of acting on anything he came back with. But I think that that's what goes on in these political parties that think that democracy, but the leaders still, who I say cometh come and who I say goeth goes. And you, for all the popularity that you had in your constituency, you were set up.
Well,
You were
that is
set
part of
up.
the dynamic. Yeah, that is part of the real politics. I
Would
am
you say that you were
much
very
wiser.
naive?
I am much wiser now, much wiser and
So you
much
were
more experienced.
you were you were naive then.
Absolutely. I was naive as a newborn baby.
Tell people you have to you have to lose your political innocence to understand politics in this country. You're absolutely correct. But I have to ask you a question. The PNM, from the days of Johnny O'Halloran, come forward. You've heard. You had to have heard of all of the allegations. Lock Joint, Central Bank Towers, Mount Hope Hospital, Foreshore Freeway. You had to have every highway that we've ever built. You had to have heard the Caroni Racing Complex. You had to have known that there were massive allegations of corruption, the gas station racket, the murder of Gene Miles. You had to know that there were massive, massive allegations of corruption, the People's National Movement. Why did you choose to put your innocence in that party?
I think that's an excellent question. You see, every generation would have its opportunity to try to make the world and their country a better place. I was not a member of the PNM. I was an attorney at law in private practice. I was not a political animal in that sense. In fact, I should tell you that I was first a member of NJAC, National Joint Action Committee, as a young university student. I was in the Central Command. But in 2007, you have to remember, that was when the constituencies were increased from 36 to 41. A gentleman by the name of Bassarat, who had known me, we came to know each other. He would have come by on a particular attorney where I think I was practicing, I had my office there at the time, Thomas Cunningham, or we were sharing a building or something. And he came, in fact, he had known Cunningham. I was by Mr. Evans Monday at the time. And he said to me, hey, listen, Mr. Manning is looking for young, bright people, or whatever flattering words he might have used. And he said, you know your family in Maruga? Philip, I had been to Maruga probably about 3 or 4 times. I was not aware that I had family in Maruga, but this is what was said. And he said, well, you know, and I said to myself, well, if it is you've been offered an opportunity to make a national contribution, in spite of whatever, as you say, might have been the track record of the PNM, you might be able to do some good. And it was against that background, I had every confidence in my own ability to perform. It was in that very narrow terms that I accepted what I saw as a challenge, you know, and that is how my entry into politics was. It was not from the point of view of, boy, you going and join our party that has been riddled with corruption. I mean, that was not really a contemplation. It was simply an opportunity to serve and to serve at the highest level. And I saw it as being a natural stepping stone from my private practice, from my civic mindedness, because all up until then I was a freelance journalist for The Guardian. I would write on articles. So I'm saying to myself, if you have this opportunity now to be of national service, make a difference, do your best, and leave the rest. And that was the motivation that propelled me, in spite of all of the unsavory historical pitfalls that the PNM might have been responsible for. National pitfalls.
Circle that a little more. Circle that a little more. Dig out deeper there.
Yeah. I will leave it there for now.
You sure?
Yeah, I'll leave it there for now.
So I could ask questions there, but if you're comfortable leaving it there, this is the first conversation we have at this level. I don't want to make you uncomfortable. Are you not
No,
responsible?
sorry?
You're not responsible for the PNM. I'm not holding you responsible for the PNM. Your brief
Yeah, I understand
flirtation.
that.
You just said
Absolutely.
to me where you have family, a founding member of the PEP, Giselle Young. She said to me, "There's come to you and tell you where you have family. You know you have family in Grandy, and we want you to run for election." You, you doesn't know. You doesn't know where you have family. PNM machine. Oh,
Yes. Such
Mr.
are the ways of the politicians.
No, but Mr. Taylor, Trinidad and Tobago is 58 years independent. And instead of going up, we've gone down. Politics has never, I can't think of an example of politics benefiting Trinidad and Tobago. I can't think of a law. I can't think of an institution. I can't think of a structure. I can't think of a system. I can't think of anything that makes us unique. I can't think of anything that says this is Trinidad and Tobago and politics led to that. I can't think of a single thing.
Well, I will not necessarily agree with that because, take for example, I was fortunate enough to be in government when we began to patent the GPAN that was invented by Professor Copeland. Now, the GPAN was giving the country the opportunity to standardize expands throughout the world. And what we were able to do, Philip, is to patent that Japan in over 68 countries. Israel, Nigeria, the United States, Germany. But government missed, successive government missed a golden opportunity, because what that would have done, it would not have only put Trinidad on the map, it would have allowed us to monetize the pan.
Monetize the pan. Yeah.
Manufacturing, you'd have entered into manufacturing agreement, because here Trinidad and Tobago would now have been able to set the tone to tell all of these countries who were anxious to have the Japan in their schools, in their churches. We would now have been able to set the gold standard as to what the manufacturing protocols were supposed to be. This is why we took the time to have it patented, but the successive governments dropped the ball. So that is one example where I think that government policy would have, if allowed to be taken to its logical conclusion, could have propelled this country way, 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 way further ahead than it was in terms of
So, okay.
foreign exchange,
Finish, finish, finish
in
your
terms
thought.
of foreign exchange, in terms of all of those young men who are bandits, probably 8 or 9 months of the year, but when it's carnival time, they find themselves in a panyard. All of the young panists who are talented, that would have been the opportunity to get them out of the country on
But
scholarships, them employed in different parts of the world. That was the golden opportunity, in my view, that was missed.
I accept that. But I find that it is very limited in scope for a country that was the third wealthiest nation in the world. Having lost our position as a major producer of sugar, having lost our position as a major producer of the #1 cocoa on the planet, having lost our position, we led the world in environmental tourism. We led the world. There are laws in the United States of America that are based on laws that were written to protect the Tobago forests. We lost a lot. There are things that Trinidad has that no other country in the world has. We have a pitch lake. Our pitch lake has never been explained, it's never been monetized, it's never been properly organized. We don't know who owns it, we don't know where the profit from it goes right now. If I ask you right now, you don't know. Nobody knows. It doesn't make itself into the budget, it doesn't make itself in the Auditor General report. Nobody knows. And I've been asking for over a decade now. Trinidad has a nylon pool. If the Bahamas or Bermuda had a nylon pool, it would be on the front page of National Geographic. Nobody knows. We're the largest brain coral in the world. I tell people that they go on Google and research. What? They didn't know. And but I know where the Great Barrier Reef is in Australia. The point I'm trying to make to you is, Trinidad and Tobago, for all those young black males that put the big pan for 6 weeks out of the year, I had proposed a marine university in Shakarama. Trinidad and Tobago is the only tropical destination outside of the hurricane belt in the Western world. We're supposed to lead the world in marine craft manufacture. That is something to give them. And I'm not saying don't patent the pan, but we're looking to monetize pan because we're thinking that maybe we could pelt a stone and get something there. We're not trying to monetize Limbo or Calypso because both of them dead. We don't know what to do with what we have. And we made a mess of it all.
Well, Philip, what you're describing there is the classic definition of a neo-colonial society. Societies such as ours that have emerged out of colonialism, instead of embracing our excellence, we disparage it. Instead of celebrating our heroes, we decry them. That is the classic neo-colonialist society that you're describing.
Why?
Um, because what colonialism did was to give you a sense of inferiority. It made you feel that your culture, that whatever you had indigenous, was merely folklore and could only be capable of become. rather than understanding as the first world countries understand that your indigenous and your native intelligences are items to be cherished, to be celebrated. Our heroes are people to be celebrated. Neo-colonial societies, it doesn't bask in its own glory. It destroys it because we always continue to look for an external stimulus
But
to the,
sir,
to the metropole
being in a
for
movement,
direction.
named the People's National Movement should come with a plan that breaks that, not reinforces it.
Well, you have to understand that the very set persons who hold the reins were themselves colonial, educated, were the products of an education system that never celebrated or never accentuated that indigenous understanding. It never bred a sense of consciousness. And this is what attracted me to National Joint Action Committee. I understood my place in the world as a young black man. My education, I understood, was and ought to be put to use in a way that would accentuate and develop conscious thought, conscious development. But if you have persons whose education system is not geared towards that, then sadly you're going to have a repetition of that kind of neo-colonial behavior.
That's that statement you just made, Peter Taylor, I do not know you personally, but that statement you just made, that my education is to be put to use to the benefit of others, I have nothing now but respect for you. I want to tell you something. That is the secret. That we, the people of Trinidad and Tobago, have never had a national identity. We see ourselves as us and everybody else as other. I'm fighting that right now, believe it or not, with doubles in a gas station. And people not understanding that you can't take away one man's livelihood to create an opportunity for somebody else. And we keep doing that nonsense. And we keep
Yeah.
having our and squabbles. Wayne Dyer said no tree is so foolish to make branches that fight among itself. But that's all Trinidad does. We fight each other. I keep asking, what is Trinidad? Nobody knows. Nobody knows what Trinidad and Tobago is. We have no
Yes.
vision. We have no vision. When they talk about give you a vision 2020, a vision 2030, it's for one of the finances to eat a food and make a money again. I have lost all faith. I have become cynical in politics. Like you and others like you, and there wouldn't have been room in a National Joint Action Committee for me, because the National Joint Action Committee, rightly, and not knocking it, was set up to raise the conditions of black people left stunted in a country where, ironically, a black party had economic and social and legislative control. Trinidad and
Well,
Tobago, Trinidad and Tobago
and Jack,
seems to.
and Jack would have had plenty room for you because if you remember the that historic march to Caroni under the banner of Indians and Africans Unite, you had people like the then Archbishop of Port of Spain, Jerry Pantin. You had persons of all
But,
ethnicities
but coming out of
embracing.
post 1970, that changed. And Makandal Dagger, and for all the Africanization of the names and everything, and I'm just saying, and I'm not knocking it, but I'm just saying that it wasn't as inclusive for me, and I belong nowhere. I am
Right.
mixed to the bone. I have every possible race that you could think of in me, and I am proud of that. I'm proud that I am so mixed that if you had to
Mhm.
send me back to where I come from, you had to send me back in pieces. And I like the fact that I could then get myself into politics because I feel everybody's experience. I say Mova, Bitam, Lavantel, and Silots. Nobody has ever said those four names as often as I say it. I name the at-risk community, the downtrodden. You say that's what you're in politics for. The first words you ever spoke to me in life is that those people, the at-risk people, are the ones that are continuing to lose. Nothing is changing for them. Politics is not helping.
Yes, and that is my difficulty with mainstream politics. That is my difficulty with a party that is so-called black party, you don't see the representation of the interests of working class Indo and Afro-Trinidadians in the wider plans of the PNM in sufficient degree. That is the reality. That is for me a difficulty because Dr. Williams came out of a colonial system where he recognized that he needed to free Trinidad and Tobago from those colonial shackles. And his philosophical thesis had to do with capitalism
And
and
slavery.
slavery. Yes, seeing slavery as an economic institution. It was of course it was racial, but his thesis is that the end of slavery had more to do with the economics of sugar rather than any humanitarian feelings,
But but I've said that. I've said that to
Yeah.
people. That sounds ridiculous to compare what's going on with the doubles vendors right now. But it's legal in Trinidad and Tobago. It is legal for people to line up outside Hadid gas station on Wrightson Road for doubles. But it's not legal for the actual doubles, people who make it the doubles, to operate their box and have people line up outside their box. And that is the same.
Absolutely.
That is the same as colonials and plantation owners going to China and South America and Africa looking to find labor that they see as opportunity to profit. Injustice
And
must never, and I want to say this, injustice must never be an opportunity to profit off of.
you're absolutely correct. I am on all fours with that because you cannot be telling me that I have to go to super farm, line up, and when it comes to the self-employed doubles man, the doubles man is the metaphor for the average working class person. You cannot tell me that the social distancing protocols cannot be in place if I'm buying a doubles, if it could be in place for me shopping at the supermarket. It makes no sense. More than that, the doubles is being sold in the open air where there's less opportunity for any contraction. So it makes no sense. And if you are talking equity, if you are talking social justice, then by God, the government of the day must be able to make rational and equitable decisions that are in the interest of the broader masses of the people.
Peter
Simple.
Taylor, Peter Taylor, I have enjoyed this conversation. That hour flew too fast. I have to bring you back on and talk to you some more. But I have to ask you two questions. I'll ask you both at the same time. Have you lost your passion for Trinidad and Tobago, and are you done with politics?
The answer to both is no. I remain a humble servant, toiling in the vineyards, um, with the hope that sometime the country is going to find the kind of leadership that it deserves. And who knows, as they say, meekly wait and murmur not.
So, everybody who comes on this show gets the same opportunity in your closing remarks to take as much time as you want to bring any of your points to fruition, or to anything that you think that you needed to say that you didn't say. I want to say to you, I'm going to do everything in my power to get you back on the show. We need to talk some more. We need to have your voice. You have an authentic voice, and the things that you're speaking, those are truths. And we need more people speaking truth. We need to make truth fashionable in this country. And I applaud you, and I respect you, and I thank you very much. Have your last words. Take as much time as you need.
I would say simply that whatever words I have uttered, I hope that they serve as a lamp unto your feet and as a light unto your path. Those are my words, commendations to Trinidad and Tobago. And I am humbled that having met so fortuitously around the savannah, me trying to keep fit, you having one of your your blogs enlightened Trinidad and Tobago that we were able to fashion this very rewarding
Four,
and fruitful
four
discussion.
people wrong, Mr. Banner, and two of them is you. Amazing, eh? That was amazing. Fortuitous coincidence. Those who know
Yes,
believe in God, every now and then, pieces move on the board, and it just tells me that cannot be an accident.
there is a being superior to man.
I believe so. Thanks a
Pleasure.
lot, Mr. My pleasure. Pleasure was mine. Thank you very, very much. And that, Trinidad and Tobago, is another example of the fact that we can go anywhere in this country and find good and decent people with the right minds and the right hearts and the right attitude, the right knowledge to fix Trinidad and Tobago. We are building, all of us, from wherever we're coming from, and we have to work together, all of us, and we need to find the solutions, all of us. And we need to break down the walls, the divide, all of us, and unite as one people under one flag to rescue this country. I thoroughly enjoyed this conversation tonight. Plain Talk is a show that is open to everyone who has something to say, something to contribute to the betterment of Trinidad and Tobago. Satish Ramsaran and all of PEP Media work overtime all the time to make this happen. And I, for myself, am humbled that I get this opportunity to do this on a nightly basis. I talk to some of the best minds, the brightest minds, the best hearts, good people. And I feel a momentum building. I feel it coming. We have an opportunity. I am hearing rumors that they want to, I'm hearing rumors that the PNM wants to dissolve the parliament in the next couple of weeks and launch an election. We're ready to launch our candidates now. I'm hearing the UNC has David Naked, former football captain, and sending him to give out hampers to test the water to see if he is electable to send him up in St. Joseph. I'm watching, I'm listening, I'm seeing the same old stunts, the same old plays. I want to tell David Naked I want him as a guest on this show because I see the heart of that man. And like Peter Taylor, who thought he was going into the right place for his politics, found out that he tried to do the right thing via the wrong vehicle. The Progressive Empowerment Party is the place for all the bright minds and the good hearts and all of you. Red, white, black, green, every shade in between. We've been trying for years to link a tenapan with a tassa. This is the opportunity right now. One people under one flag. Tomorrow night we have Dano Suku, head of the Agricultural Society. We're going to talk again how to get this country to feed itself next week. We have a UNC member of parliament, former minister, a senior ranking former police officer. We're still going to focus on the things that broke and corrupted this country. So until tomorrow, stay safe, Trinidad and Tobago.